what I consider to be the most important lecture of this entire class. No pressure, but listen up, ladies in the classroom with me. This lecture was born out of deep frustration from your instructor. There was a point in time where I felt like I was having to give the exact same feedback over and over to students on little things that weren't necessarily, I mean, they're part of an activity, but I didn't want to nitpick people so much every single time. And so I decided what would happen if on the very first day I gave this lecture to point out all of these things that are very important to know about editing content for the web, and that you had it from the very start. How would that experience be, both for you as students, what you could learn, and for me as the instructor as I am making my way through the course? And I will tell you, it changed my life. I'm a happier person. And so the thing is, if you really pay attention to what I'm talking about here and you could explain the concepts that I share in this video with someone else, I would say that you have successfully learned the majority of things that you need to know in this class, right? But so here we go. This video is called The 7 Deadly Sins. Now the first one, when you are creating content online, is to create meaningful links and then have those links launch in a new browser window when that's appropriate. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and apologize ahead of time now because I have a few screenshots in this particular lecture that have LMS 3 in it, and we're now in LMS 4. And so my screenshots aren't going to apply to what you're seeing now, but I'm hoping that you can still extrapolate these concepts and techniques from one environment to the next, right? So this first sin is, thou shalt not create links with terrible titles, right? So I've given you an example here that I call the good, the bad, and the ugly. The first one, and so the link here is denoted by the red text with the underline on it. The first one is an example of a well-titled link, Week 1 project. As a user, I can expect that when I click on that link that I'm going to go to where? Week 1's project, right? Because it has a meaningful title that helps me know as a user where I'm going to end up, right? A bad example would be a generic title, right? That you've gone to the trouble of giving it some words to describe it, but the description is so generic that it doesn't really tell me anything about the content that I might find there. So click here for more. And it even sounds kind of spammy, right? It's almost just a little bit oh, I don't know where I'm going to end up.
Like you're going to get a virus.
Yes, exactly. Like I'm going to get a virus or go to some site that I don't want to go to, right? And then the last example is what I call the ugly, and it's just a bunch of gobbledygook. That is a straight up URL. That is what someone has copied out of the browser, address bar. That is in many cases nonsensical. Anybody who knows anything about the web could look at that and parse it out just a little bit and get some information about different things. But who's got time for that? I just want to click on that link and go and have confidence as a user that I'm ending up in the place that I've intended to be, right? So here's another good example of that. How many of you have seen what a link to a Google Doc looks like, right? Usually it's about 3 lines of mixed case, letters and numbers and symbols and all this stuff. And when you look at it, you have no idea where you're going, right? You just have no idea. But these 2 links on the page right now, or on the screen, both lead to the exact same place. They lead to an example proposal that I created for this class, right? But which one lets you know where you're going? The one that has been given a meaningful title. Right? So this is an example from an old FSO3 discussion board. And anytime that I can, I like to provide these examples for you in environments where you work so that you can more easily pick these lessons up. Yeah, right. So this is true story, right? This is a real discussion board in one of my classes. The first student nope. The first student posts their assignment and it says blow period your period mine exclamation point. I certainly appreciate the attempt at humor here. right? I can believe that this student thinks that their assignment is the shit, right? Because it is like gonna blow my mind. It's gonna be so good, right? And based upon the orange color of the text, that is the indication of what is actually the link there. But this would be your bad example, right? Out of the good, the bad, and the ugly, this is your bad example because they did give it a title, but it's not meaningful, right? I don't know where this is actually going to take me. The next example on the line here, here's the link to my week 1 practice project inventory. That is the good example because I have confidence as a user that I am going to end up at this person's week 1 practice project inventory. So high five to this student who took the time to give that a meaningful title. And then last but not least, we've got the ugly example, which is the gobbledygook, which is a URL that he has copied and pasted from his browser address bar. So this is how these things look in real life. Meaningful link titles, y'all, and have them open in that new browser window, right? Again, apologies for the old screenshots from FSO3, but FSO4 just launched this morning. Sorry I didn't get a chance to update this lecture slides just yet, but gosh, I'm going to put that on my long list of to-dos for sure.
All of ours are going to be like the new examples.
Yes, exactly. Everything you guys do this month, I'm screenshotting to put into my future lectures. So this is how you would do it in the old FSO. Like you would select the text that you wanted to make a hyperlink. You would go in here, you would put the URL, so that is where you're copying and pasting from the browser into there. And then where it says text, that's your link title. It operates a little bit differently in FSO4 now. I'm going to give you a little tutorial of that at some point just so you can see. But it had this little toggle box here that said open link in a new tab. It operates a little bit differently in FSO4, but we're going to get to that at a point later on in this archive because I want to make sure that you've got it. You know what? Let's get out of here right now and take a look at it. There's no time like the present. All right, so here is going to be a very short demonstration of how to create a meaningful link inside the new FSO. I am looking at a new message window here, but this thing would apply to any like sort of editing window that pops open within FSO, right? And so I'm going to type in something that says, here is a link to the CNN website, right? So I'm going to go really quickly over here and I'm going to grab, I can't type today, there we go, CNN address, and I'm going to copy it. I'm going to come back over here into my window. So here is a link to the CNN website. All right, I'm going to highlight that text that I want to create a link out of, right? It pops open this little bar when I do that with full of editing options. So you go here to this little link icon, you're going to select that. And so I am going to paste the link in there, and then I'm going to say I want it to open in a new tab or blank, right? That's how you do that. Now you have to make sure that you go check that that is right, and that is how you make a meaningfully titled link and have it open a new browser window in FSO4. You've seen it here first, folks. You've seen it here first. And now that you know how to do this, I am expecting you to every assignment that you submit for editing for the web, that the link that you supply opens in a new browser window and is meaningfully titled. Now back to our regularly scheduled lecture. 7 deadly sin. Number 2, that is that when you are creating content for an online interactive medium, you want to make sure that you are leveraging headings and lists in the content that you create to avoid super dense paragraphs of text, right? Because nobody likes to read really dense paragraphs of text, so you try to break it up in ways that make it easier to consume that information. Here's an example. This is basically the same information on the left column and on the right column, but you can see that the information on the right column is easier to read because I've broken it up with titles, headings, subheadings, and bulleted lists. Anytime that you can with your web copy or content, you want to follow this same structure. Now, I like to, again, throw us back into FSO so that you can see an example, right? The reason why you make these considerations is because you are designing or creating content for a particular audience, for a particular reason, right? And so as I'm going to get kind of meta here, so follow me with this line of conversation, right? In FSO, I am a content creator as your instructor, right? Because I am writing all of these activities that you guys, my students, are the audience for, right? So in FSO, I'm a content creator, right? And my activities are my content. And you guys are who I think about when I'm writing them, right? And so if I'm going to practice what I'm preaching as your instructor, you better believe I'm doing meaningful link titles and having them open in a new browser window for you when appropriate. But the other thing I'm doing is leveraging headings and subheadings and bulleted lists to make your experience of my content in FSO easier to read, right? This is one of your activities for this course. Looks pretty dense, doesn't it? And because there's a lot of information in there and that it is an activity that you're going to be graded on, I could imagine that there's a certain amount of anxiety that you might feel as a student to think like, oh my God, like I can definitely read all this, but am I getting it all? Am I hitting all of the points that I need to hit? Am I going to be docked on my grade? Am I going to be penalized because I missed that one thing? I need to go back and check. I wish that I could like check these sections. These are the things that I think about, and I think, oh, I want to make this easier on my students so that they can just worry about doing their homework and not worrying about the way that I've written it that makes it super duper hard, right? So if I'm practicing what I preach, this is what your assignment looks like instead, right? And so I've got these little sections, I've got subheadings, I've got bulleted lists that make it easier for you to scan and for you to review that information when you've completed the activity that says, okay, did I get that part about the styles? Let me go check. Okay, there's 3 points here that I need to make sure that I got. Check, check, check. Right? These are the little user experience considerations that I want you guys to have in your mind when you're developing any kind of content for an interactive environment. Interactive just means that people make choices and have to do things with what it is that you've created. So you want to be thinking about who is creating this and how can I support them in what they're there to do. You guys come to FSO to learn and do assignments. My job is to create content that supports you in your mission to do that. Number 3 on the list of 7 deadly sins is never ever post text as an image. No picture of words, right? This one, it's easier to demonstrate with, with my examples here. Let me just jump. Actually, we'll talk about this first. Why? Right? So if you have a whole bunch of text and you decide, I'm not going to put this text, I'm not going to copy and paste the text and put it in the web page. I'm going to screenshot this, big bunch of text, and I'm going to post this screenshot of words into a web page. One of the things that you've done is that you have decreased the search engine optimization of that text. Google or other search engines can scan text on a web page so that they can match your content with what a user puts in for the search terms, right? And so if you've got all of this text, but now it's not really text anymore, it's a picture. It is a collection of pixels in the shape of words, right? But it's not words that can be searched and indexed anymore by search engines, then you have severely decreased the optimization of the content on that site. You have made it harder for people to find you when they are searching for content or terms similar to what you have on your website. The other thing that it does is that when you post a picture of words, specifically like a lot of words, right? Images for the web are optimized in a way that compresses the file so that it loads faster, right? And for that reason, sometimes with that compression, the images become slightly blurred. And when you have text that's slightly blurred, it's harder to read, right? And so in addition to decreasing the search engine optimization, you've decreased the usability of that content, right? Anything that's harder to read is less usable altogether. This is an example from the old Full Sail website. This was actually a very timely thing because I was in my web class with some students and they were like, what's our next class? Where do we go after this? And they pulled up this particular page of the Full Sail website, and they wanted to copy this MCBS schedule and just like put it in something that they had for their own reference. But when they tried to copy and paste the text of the order of their classes, they realized it wasn't text at all. It was a picture of words, right? It was a picture of words. And so in that moment, they had this beautiful example of how, like, the usability of that information, that student couldn't use that information how she wanted to because it's not text. It was a picture of text at that point. I will tell you the Full Sail website has since been redesigned, and now it is selectable text for the schedules, but it was a moment in time where it was a beautiful, just like moment of learning all together there in the class. Where do I see this? So one of the places I see this most with students is with their resumes that they want to post like on a portfolio site or something, and they'll have like a resume that they've done in Word or Pages or something, some other print intended environment where they're able to like pixel perfect the way they want it designed and line things up, and they're like, this just looks amazing, I want to post just like this. But they don't know how to replicate that design on a web page, right? So what they do is they screenshot the resume and then they post that picture of their resume on a web page. But that's ineffective for all the reasons I've already discussed. Another place that I see it is that, for some of the fictitious scenarios that you guys will be working on, I have had students, instead of take the content that I've provided for them and take it and place it thoughtfully on their fictitious business website, they screenshot it as I've already supplied it to them because they don't want to copy and paste it or do any sort of styling or editing on their own, and they think it will be easier just to post pictures of those things, right? So be forewarned as you're heading into these assignments that is not an acceptable solution. The number 4 sin that you need to be aware of is it's very necessary to observe proper inset padding for all of your elements, text, images, and otherwise. This is something that you will learn more about in graphic design as well. Jacob, it has a slightly different terminology for graphic design, but the concept is the same. But think breathing room for your elements. You don't want them all crowded and hemmed up on each other, right? So I'm going to show you a few examples. In the box at the top, you can see how all of the text here just really pushes out all the way to the edge of that white container that it's in, right? Like there's just no space between the text and the edge of the container that it's contained in, right? So there would be no inset padding on that. The next example down is I wanted to show you what would happen if you applied a consistent padding around that element. And then the last one is I have just like brought them all together so that you can see how the content in the third example down there has that breathing room, right? It's not squished up against the sides of the container that it's in, right? And so anytime that you have elements, you want to make sure that there is adequate space around elements as they are in a container or if they're butting up next to each other. And it works the same for images, right? So here in this example, the star points go all the way out to the edge, and it's all crowded up in there. But then if we apply a consistent spacing or padding around that, it gives the appearance of more white space, more breathing room, and this element is not crowding up against the other elements within the screen. Another area for you guys to be paying attention to, very important, is color contrast. And you do this for maximum readability of the elements that you are posting, right? So here's a little example. Can you read this? How about now? How about now? How about now? There's several different options on there, though obviously the one that stands out the best is the black on the white. It is offering maximum color contrast, but the red, stands out decently on the page. But the two that are in gray, and you might not even be able to see that one on the bottom. You can barely see it, right? It just
sounds like when she said "how about now" the fourth time, I was like, wait,
exactly, right? And so it makes it too hard to read. Like, people don't have time. When people are online, they usually have like 20 windows open. They're listening to music too, and they're like doing all kinds of stuff. Nobody has the time to be having to concentrate that hard on your content. As a creator, it's your job to give them what they want and make it easy, right? So don't challenge them. Even if you think you're being like super creative, you're just being annoying, because people want to get what they're there for in a fast and efficient way, right? If it's not usable, it's not worth it. How about reading this stuff when it's up against a patterned background, right? And so in this example, I want you guys to be looking at, okay, let's say I'm making a web page and I'm putting text over a picture. Can I read the text pretty easily? In this case, the text is the most important thing that I am sharing here on this page. If I have made it too difficult for you to read, given the image that I've put it on top of, then I'm not effective in the way that I'm designing. I have not made it usable or easy for you guys as my intended audience. One way that you might be able to combat this would be to create kind of like an opaque canvas behind whatever the text is that you have, right? So maybe you still get a little bit of that texture in the image and you can kind of see the design element. I'm just trying to give you guys different thought points and strategies I'm not trying to take away all your creativity here. I'm asking you to be thoughtful about it, right? Is what you've created usable? That should be one of the first questions that you ask yourself in this class. And why? Because this class isn't just about design, it's about functionality too. Because in graphic design, let's say like you have created a logo and you print that static on a page, someone just gets to experience it as it is. They don't necessarily have to interact with it. But a website, people are constantly making choices about how to navigate this thing that you've created. So you need to make sure that it's usable in that regard. The seventh deadly sin that you should be paying attention to is this idea of minding the fold. Anybody familiar with that term? It's an old newspaper term to describe the area of the publication, so how a newspaper folds in half. So it's that area that when the newspaper is folded in half and put in the old school like newspaper vendor boxes, that's what would show up in that little window, so that when someone was walking by and they would see the headline of the day, they'd be like, oh, that's important. I need to pay attention to that. Here, let me put my money in and buy this newspaper. So it's an old newspaper term that's meant to describe the very important area of content that captures people's attention. On a website, the fold is the area that you see on a website's homepage before you have to scroll at all. It is the initial place that you get to look. It should have branding information, clear and intuitive navigational systems, so that like if I think I know where I need to go, I can navigate there based on how you have labeled things. And it should have some, the most important information should be either available to me right there above the fold before I have to scroll, or I can clearly make a path to find that information for myself. So when you're designing these things, you really need to be paying attention to that, what I like to call high value real estate, because that area on the homepage is the only area that you can guarantee that a user will see when they come to your site, because they come there and they have an option. They can just click right off if it doesn't make sense or they don't know where to go. They don't have to go any further. They can pop open another site that'll give them the information. But if they have clear branding information, if you have thought enough about your target audience to put the information that they need front and center, or at least giving them intuitive navigation to be able to get to where they need to get to, then your design is successful. Here's an example of that old Full Sail website. This was the home page. Who is the target audience for the Full Sail website?
Potential students.
Potential students, right? Not current students. Potential students, right? So they're trying to get people to come to Full Sail, and I think they did a good job with this, because We've got our clear branding information. We've got not only links to find out more about the programs, the campus, the admissions, all that. They've gone ahead right there at the top and put scholarship spotlight, right? So what? I can get scholarships to go to this school? Cool. And then wait a second, look at this awesome banner image. These labs and these facilities at Full Sail are amazing. I want to be a student there. And look at this cool guy. He might be my new best friend. They've done this in a way to make the school look attractive and to give you, at a moment's glance, the opportunity to learn more in any one of these areas that they've highlighted that they know that as a prospective student you would be interested in. This is very thoughtfully designed. What is the website for current students? Connect. Man, you're on fire, LaJoya. You are on fire, right? And so the content and the way that Connect is set up is for a totally different audience of people. They're not trying to get you to come to school here because you already go to school here. They're sharing things that are relevant to you guys based on what they know about their current student body. All right, last but not least, and this one is a real thinker, you guys. It's a real thinker. Anytime that you create and share content online, give me the context to understand what you've created and why. Help me understand what I'm seeing. Give me the connective tissue so that I can understand what you've just posted. In a lot of your classes, you'll have an instructor say that, share your lynda.com course certificate that you completed this particular training. In this class, I ask you guys to post all of your activities and your deliverables on a blog that you probably started back in Pete's class. And the reason why I do this is because every time you're posting on your blog, and if you don't have a blog, it's very easy. Just start one and start posting for this class. But the reason why I have you posted to this blog is because every time you post an activity for this class, whether or not you intend to, you are showing me if you are internalizing and applying what you're learning, because a blog is a website, essentially. A blog is an interactive medium. And so when you post stuff out there, even if it's not what I'm grading you on for a particular activity, I can see how well you're thinking about this stuff and applying what you are learning, right? So if I say, tomorrow actually you have an activity due where you watch a lynda.com Foundations of UX content strategy. It's fabulous. Everybody loves it. It's relatively short. But I say, post this course completion certificate and answer these prompts. If you don't give me the context to understand what you're posting on your blog, if I was a stranger, I might be like, I don't understand this content that I've just come across. It's just like a certificate. Cool, cool certificate, Brooke. Thanks for posting it. Right, but it changes the conversation when Brooke posts her course completion certificate and says, in this activity, I was asked to watch this lynda.com to learn about the foundations of UX so I can have a basic understanding of principles of web design. And the aim here was to introduce me to these concepts and techniques that I'm going to be exploring as I enter into my editing for the web course this month. It's just 2 sentences, but it explains the content that you've put on the page. I now understand, if I was just a stranger and came across your page, why you're posting that stuff. I have the context to know, oh, she's a student. Oh, she's in an editing for the web course. Oh, she's learning foundational principles that she's going to apply, later on in her coursework. Got it. Makes sense. No disconnect. No head scratching moment where I'm not quite sure how to take this one. And now I'm going to tell you a story. Never forget, this one's called The Legend of Dan Tilley. Dan Tilley was an MCBS student here a couple years ago. Really great guy. Everybody loved this guy. He used to have a big afro, kind of like Sideshow Bob, is what he looked like. And super talented, really talented. And he was in a couple of my classes, portfolio and web design. And part of what he was going to do was to create a portfolio website. And Dan created his portfolio, and it was beautiful, right? It was clean and minimalist, and just everything was very thoughtful in what he did. And I went to the portfolio projects page, and I come across a video, just a video on the page. And I'm like, okay, so I press play. And on the video is Dan Tilley playing, killing it actually, mandolin. Do you guys know what a mandolin is? Right? It's an incredibly difficult stringed instrument that includes strumming and picking and all kinds of like craziness. And in this video, Dan is just going to town on this mandolin, and I'm just like, wow, this guy is so talented. But when the video ended, what do I know about Dan Tilley?
That he can play the mandolin.
That he can play the mandolin. Is that what he was trying to show me on his portfolio website? Probably not, right? Because the truth is, Dan Tilley is also an incredible editor and sound mixer. And what he was trying to show me in this video that he created, not only he was the videographer, amazing like creative camera angles, like interesting cuts. He even recorded a separate audio track and then timed that audio track and mixed it in with like the finger movements of him playing that in the video type of a thing, right? So here he is, he was like, he conceptualized and created the video, shot it all, edited it all, did separate sound and audio engineering, mixed it all together, right? And he's the talent in the video. But as a stranger watching this video on his portfolio site, the only thing I can leave there with is knowing that he can play the mandolin. Because he did not give me the context to understand the content that I have on the page. All he needed to say was, in this video, I am highlighting my skills in audio mixing, video editing. I used Premiere and Audition and, whatever. And by the way, I'm the one playing the mandolin. Now I know as a hiring manager, oh, like this guy has like deep skills in this area, and this video is like proof of that. But I would never know that unless he gave me the context to understand the content that he created. Does that make sense, you guys? So one of the things that you're doing in this class is starting your portfolio website if you have not already tinkered with that on your own. Right? And on your portfolio website, I would imagine that you want to share portfolio projects that demonstrate your skills in a certain area. The deliverable itself is not enough. Give me a title. Give me a short description. I'm not talking a dissertation. I'm not talking 20 pages. I'm talking just enough to help me understand what I'm looking at, right? It'd be nice if you could tell me what your role was in it. And then also like what skills you're showcasing, and then also, any software that you used. Because with that, like think about it, who's your portfolio site for? It's for somebody who maybe wants to hire you for a job, right? So you want to share that you have skills, demonstrated skills in these areas, and that you know how to use this technical software. That is the end of the 7 Deadly Sins lecture for this class. It's a lot to think about, but I share it with you here on the first day because I want to open your mind to these ideas about user experience considerations and how they inform our content creation choices for an interactive medium. Questions? All right.